Welcome to Interconnected with Jourdan. I'm your host, Jourdan Saunders, and today's episode is for anyone who has spent years just unraveling. You felt like you've been holding it together on the outside while quietly unraveling on the inside, wondering why the strategies only work for maybe other people, but maybe leave you feeling more exhausted. So I'm joined by two incredible therapists today, Lauren, occupational therapist, and Ankita, speech language pathologist, who know this world not just clinically, but also personally. After navigating their own attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD diagnosis, they came together to create Kindly Neuro, redefining care for neurodivergent women, providing neurodiversity-affirming goal-oriented services tailored to the unique needs of women. So this episode is for you if you've been going all in, trying every strategy that seems to work for everyone else, and still finding yourself overwhelmed, exhausted, and wondering what you're missing. Maybe you're navigating late diagnosis of ADHD, identity shifts, or simply just trying to feel more like yourself again. And you're ready for support that honors how you actually move through the world. Maybe you're a therapist, educator, caregiver, or leader wanting to support neurodivergent individuals with care that's not just clinical, but compassionate, personalized, and rooted in lived experience. I'm joined here with Lauren and Ankita, and I wanted to first start and say welcome. If you all could share where you're located, that would be awesome.
I'm located in Salt Lake City, Utah. I just moved here.
And I'm in San Francisco, California, but I grew up in North Carolina.
Awesome. I wanted to just start with the moment that changed things. You all both discovered your own ADHD diagnosis later in life. What was that experience like for each of you? And either one of you can start first.
Yeah, it was a very interesting experience, and it was kind of emotionally conflicted because on one hand it was relief and it was very validating. On the other hand, it felt like I had wasted a lot of time not knowing, right? So like many years of thinking, I had anxiety and not understanding why. Um, and issues with organization and short-term memory and um and then some things I love about myself too, like I have a wide array of hobbies and interests that I'm into. I can get super passionate about one thing, and I love that about myself, but I did realize that not everybody is like that. And if I had known earlier in my life that I had ADHD, I might be able to sort of like feel more validated in my experience as well, and not feel bad about, how I was and like the parts of my personality that I identified with, um, as strengths as well, right? So overall, it's been like a game changer though. Like it's been a very positive experience. I'm trying not to dwell on the past of like what could have been or what could have been, could have changed because of that. And then just looking forward. So I was diagnosed after I had my baby. I think she was about 6 months old. And, with the crash of the postpartum hormones, with all the, the dopamine just plummeting at that time. Um, and then with my undiagnosed, untreated ADHD, it was just like a recipe for like feeling very, very scattered and anxious, and comparing myself to other moms that seem to really like have it together. And I'm like, man, I can't even like remember to like pack her bag before we leave. And I can't remember where I put her bottle or her diapers, things like this. And, so I was like, all right, this is something is up. I'm feeling like I can't manage my life. And it was very overwhelming. And yeah, so that's here we are now, and I'm feeling much better and feeling a lot of like joy that we can bring help to people that are in similar situations.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story, Lauren. And I'll turn it over to you, Ankita, too, as well to share your story.
Yeah, I really like that story about your journey, Lauren, because I think it's kind of similar to mine. I really think that, there's a lot that I learned about myself. And it wasn't like the diagnosis that kind of changed my life. It was just, I learned, okay, this is what my challenges are and why I, forget things, or sometimes the words don't come. And so I have to use different words, or my communication's different, or my friendships look like this compared to kind of what you see on social media, or just hear with other people's stories. And it kind of just all made sense, and all the pieces fit together in terms of like, these are my challenges and these are my strengths. But this is also why, like, I gravitate towards certain activities. Like,
Mm.
when I was younger, I would try everything and I just never could stick to one thing. And like, I was always just like, if I just stuck to that, I would be like a pro, or I would just have more of a skill. But I always gravitated back to yoga and like the breathing. And it kind of made sense because it's such a powerful, tool to use when your mind just needs to be quieted and you need to be like in a specific environment to help with that, with the breathing and the mindfulness. And so things like that. And I think my journey to diagnosis really started because last year, personally and professionally, like there was a lot of changes. And, Lauren and I were talking, because her and I have been friends for a while. And I was like, maybe I should try to figure out what's going on and why I'm really struggling more than it seems like others are struggling. So once we kind of went down this journey, it just made everything better.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing your story too, Ankita. It's interesting how you all talk about whatever point you were at in your journey. It's this common theme of, I feel like I don't have it all together like this person, or how this should look at this point in my life. And I imagine how hard that must have been. Lauren, you talked about, how do you look forward and move forward and, still find joy and look at all the strengths too that are there. I want to know more of what you all do, but I want to ask a different question, especially looking forward to how you provide the value based on your lived experiences. So, what were you missing that you're now trying to give to others?
That's a great question. For me, it was practical applications, practical techniques and skills that I could learn to just help in my day-to-day life so that I didn't have to work 3 times as hard to do the same thing as everybody else was doing, right? Um, and beyond that, though, is like just someone to talk to kind of lead me, um, how do I say this? Like lead me down a path to my goals and what I should be doing, and not just telling me, and not just being like, this is what you need to do. Because with ADHD, what I've learned too is like people tell you to do all kinds of stuff. They're like, oh, you have ADHD, you should get a planner. And like planners can be great if you're someone that works well with a planner, but it's not like a one fit, a one for all solution. So, someone there to say, hey, what are your goals? You know, how do you think you can meet that goal? What's the plan? And then let's go do the plan and then see what happens. And then come back and reassess. So it's very like goal directed, and the client is really kind of leading the the session and leading the like the treatment essentially.
Interesting. I like how you tailor it versus so much providing the same thing, because you did mention planners, how they may be helpful for one person, they may not be as effective for another person. So I do like
Right.
that you said that you tailor it based on the needs of your clients that you're working with.
And also, it's a lot of us, some of us with ADHD, not everybody can have a hard time with being told what to do. I think that's what makes us really good entrepreneurs and creators and, you know, everything else. We have a lot of zest for life, but when someone is like, you need to do this, you're like, oh, no, absolutely not. I'm not buying a planner now just because you told me to. So I think it's especially important to have someone discover what they need with your help and guiding them along the way.
So it sounds like framing is really important too in terms of your messaging and how you're delivering those uh, strategies as well.
Yeah, exactly.
What
I
about you,
think,
Ankita?
yeah, I think for me, what I was really missing that I think we do a good job of trying to provide in our space is that metacognition piece of it. I'm not telling you who you are because just because you have an ADHD diagnosis, and some people don't have a diagnosis, they're just have these symptoms that they're like, hey, I'm struggling with this and I need help. Understanding yourself and then figuring out, yeah, like the practical tools that work for who you are and the environment that you're currently struggling in. I don't have a baby yet, but I know that in a corporate environment or in a home health environment that I was working in before, or in different settings, especially in the workplace, you need different tools. And just kind of understanding who you are and then making those goals and having someone be there in a non judgmental way to just help you navigate that journey.
I love that. And Ankita, you mentioned, well, first of all, what I love about the conversation that we're having, but also to how you all learn at different points along your journey, at different points in your life. Um, so, Lauren, you had mentioned you wrote something that stopped me in my tracks because you stated that as neurodiverse women ourselves, we understand the hurdles of late diagnosis, hormonal fluctuation, motherhood, and societal pressures. You all talked about that on your website, and I wanted to really dive into that just a little bit. What does that actually look like in real life for the women you support and for yourselves?
Yeah, it's a great question. Being able to put the compassion into working with clients because we've lived through it. We know what that experience is like. We also know the reasoning behind like the hormonal fluctuations, right? There's a strong link between estrogen and dopamine. And for instance, if you are having a harder time managing your tasks when you're PMSing or when you're postpartum, um, that's something that's really important to know because it can affect your day to day, and you can equip yourself, with different tools or give yourself a little bit more grace in those periods also, right? Knowing, hey, this is a hormonal shift, and maybe I'm having a harder time because of that. It's not because I'm, a terrible whatever. and and then beyond that, like perimenopause, menopause, we haven't gone through that yet, but that's another factor of the hormonal shifts. So I would say overall, it's just, putting our knowledge, but also like our compassion and empathy into the people we're working with.
Akita, what's the emotional toll, would you say, of being high functioning, high achieving, and silently struggling?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think part of it is that you just put so much on yourself. And I think it really can lead to burnout if there aren't tools in place with how to manage all the parts of your life. And there are several parts of ADHD, like some people have something called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which is that you're a little bit more sensitive to rejection, or if someone, say you're in a meeting, says like, okay, let's circle back, but it's just a text form, they might take it as like, why did they say that? Was it something I said earlier? What did I do? Like, you might end up kind of internalizing a lot of the things and symptoms, or you might just end up working so hard that you burn yourself out. So just learning how to compartmentalize parts of your life and using all the tools in your toolbox, just to manage all of your emotions and have a safe space where you can go and say, okay, I had a hard day. This is what happened. What what can I do? Or just kind of break it down.
What would you say that one shift that helps your clients move from survival mode to feeling more grounded, more steady, even if life is still messy?
I mean, I think that mindfulness and breath work, just learning how to take a moment and just breathe and pause. And, even out there's tons of breathing exercises. There's so many. So you don't just have to say, okay, I can just breathe, like you can have specific ones for specific environments. And I think that really helps ground a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, Lauren, I have this question for you. So, Kindly Neuro was born out of friendship. I love that you all are friends too. Uh, but it was also born out of necessity. You all created the space that you all needed. And so, could you share how this vision came together and what makes the work you all do different from traditional models of therapy?
Well, I can tell you where it started. I texted Ankita and I said, "Do you want to start a business?" And we met at a cafe
Yeah.
in San Francisco before she moved. And love Ankita, she was just like, "Yeah, let's hear about it." And so she met me there, and I was like, "All right, let's. I think there's a gap here. I think this is something that women could really use." And she was like, "Oh, absolutely." Like, you were on board with that. And then we like kind of, it was like a very loose idea at first, right? And then it just, with both of us working together, like merged and came into Kindly Neuro. Um, and it's been like the most fun process actually too, because we're friends, and we're both like really complement each other well. And I think that also like shows itself in like our like therapy styles as well, with speech and occupational therapy being their own separate domains, of course, and scopes of practice, but complementing each other in like a multidisciplinary way, right? Which, for us that work in healthcare, we see in many different settings that multidisciplinary is more effective for the patients and the clients, right? Depending on the setting you're in. So, um, I'll speak for the OT part of like what makes it different than other models. And then Ankita, of course, I'd love for you to speak on the speech side. Um, so, I think with OT, at the end of the day, our biggest thing is function or occupation. And a lot of people, I had a friend today ask me, she's like, "What do you mean by function?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, it's a word you don't hear that often in the day to day, but just like what you need to do, have to do, want to do. Is what's going on in your life keeping you from doing those things? If so, like let's work on those, and let's find ways to accommodate, compensate or change something potentially, so you can perform it better." So what that actually looks like is practical hands-on tools and applications, but also taking into consideration like the sensory processing aspect, which is a huge part of OT. And ADHD and sensory processing sensitivities are very linked together, the studies are finding. So I put that into my approach working with clients as well, so that you can make changes to maybe your environment, right? That are causing you to feel more, you know, like less focused, essentially. So I would say those are like the primary differences. Is that as OT is, and I believe should be, is always occupation based. Like, what do you want to do? Like, you want to go play with your kids and have a great day. Like, that's what we're focusing on. We're not focusing on your disorder. We're really not focusing on a diagnosis at all. It gives us a little bit more story about what's going on with you, but everybody is so different. And so that's kind of the approach that I take.
Yeah, and I think with speech, Jourdan, you can kind of know it's like so misunderstood all the time. What do speech therapists do? And I think the overarching piece is communication, right? And a lot of it also overlaps with OT in terms of like the cognition piece. But there's also like sensory communication in ADHD that we need to take account of. What's your environment look like when you're communicating with others? If you're feeling overwhelmed, how do you have like phrases, things that you can go to manage that conversation? Do you have ways to reduce your decision fatigue or even attend a teletherapy session? So a lot of speech therapy is not, I can already talk. It's more just like, how do I communicate effectively with my relationships? And then kind of like if I'm doing something, how do I use my executive functioning or cognition to kind of help me through that with organization, time management? I think a lot of what Lauren and I talk about is OT and speech. We really want to build that education on how do we contribute to ADHD care, and really promoting that we are a key tool that should be included in the holistic care because we bring different strategies to the table.
It sounds like your work really complements the style that you all and how you're approaching it really complements the therapy sessions, it sounds like. So that's wonderful. And I'm actually curious about what are you all continuing to expand at Kindly Neuro? What's next for you all? And then if you could just share how our listeners who are listening can keep in touch and follow your work, that would be great.
Lauren, do you want to start on this one?
Sure. Yeah. Right now we're continuing to grow our clienteles. And also, we provide neurodiversity consulting for corporations and organizations, bringing that same framework into our trainings as well. So we're still coming at it from a OT and speech approach and using our clinical background to better equip us to make a more, help organizations create a more inclusive environment for neurodivergent people, of any gender, and any diagnosis or non-diagnosis. And so that's what's next on the table for us.
Yeah, and we have a website. So you can check out our website, kindlyneuro.com. Follow our page on LinkedIn. You can connect with either one of us. We're always open and would love to have as many conversations as possible. We just really want to provide a space for people to go to get the care that they need, or have an option for consulting on another kind of point of view.
This has been wonderful. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories, your heart, and your mission. The care you're offering isn't just therapeutic, it's revolutionary. It says to people everywhere, you didn't need to be fixed, you just needed to be seen clearly. To those listening, thank you for tuning in. Whether you're navigating ADHD yourself, maybe you're supporting someone who is, or simply you're here to learn, your presence in these conversations does matter. We're grateful you chose to spend this time with us. And if something resonated today, trust that whether you're navigating your own ADHD diagnosis or simply walking beside someone who is, know that your experience is valid and you are worthy of care that sees all of you. So let's keep walking this road of connection, compassion, and possibility together. Until next time, stay interconnected.